As soon as this policy came out, landlords in Changsha were devastated. Isn't this like working for free? A 20% tax? Why don't they just rob us directly? So, what's the reason behind this? I did some digging. It turns out that recently, the second-hand housing market in Changsha's Wangcheng and Xingsha districts has been doing well, which means fewer people are buying new homes. Over the past 2 months, sales at many new housing developments have been dismal, with some projects barely selling in single digits. To encourage more people to spend money on new homes, the authorities have decided to target second-hand home landlords. If you sell a second-hand property, they'll tax a profit at 20%. The poor landlords in Changsha are once again being exploited by the government.
In addition to taxing second-hand homes, the biggest topic in China's real estate market recently is the landlord tax. Many people dream of becoming landlords, earning passive income without having to do much. But now, the days of making easy money as a landlord might be over. Since the start of this year, many have reported that the Chinese Communist Party tax authorities are asking landlords to pay back what's now being called the landlord tax. This landlord tax generally refers to the income tax that individuals are supposed to pay when renting or subletting properties.
A landlord's nightmare might really be here. Property tax hasn't arrived yet, but landlord taxes have already been implemented in 3 provinces: Hebei, Henan, and Yunnan, with the highest tax rate at 20%. For example, if you have a house and the monthly rent is 2,000 yuan, that's 24,000 yuan a year. With a 10% tax rate, you'd have to pay 2,400 yuan in taxes. If you own multiple properties and rent them out, you have to pay even more taxes. If this policy is rolled out nationwide, it will truly be a nightmare for landlords.
Actually, as far back as 2021, provinces like Yunnan, Hebei, and Hunan had already issued clear rules about landlord tax. Take Yunnan as an example. The tax formula is landlord tax equals rental home income minus rental cost times tax rate. For individuals renting out homes, the tax rate is 10%, but for commercial spaces, offices, or factories, it can be as high as 20%. In the past, landlords mostly had to report this tax themselves and enforcement wasn't strict, so why is it being enforced so strongly now? The first reason is that local government finances are in bad shape. Just how bad? The government data makes it pretty clear. As of mid-year, local government debt across China stood at 42.61 trillion yuan or $6.1 trillion US, and debt from city investment companies reached 62.19 trillion yuan or $8.86 trillion US. Nationwide public budget revenue in the first half of the year was 11.59 trillion yuan, a 2.8% drop compared to last year. Central government revenue dropped by 7.2%, while national tax revenue dropped by 5.6% to 9.41 trillion yuan. Most major tax revenue sources for the CCP have decreased. For example, domestic value-add tax only reached 3.54 trillion yuan, down 5.6% year-on-year. Corporate income tax was 2.54 trillion yuan, down 5.5%. Personal income tax was 735.8 billion yuan, down 6.7%. Customs duty reached 118.5 billion yuan, down 5.2%. Urban maintenance and construction tax was 256 billion yuan, down 6.7%. Vehicle purchase tax stood at 125.3 billion yuan, down 5.4%. Stamp duty revenue was 163.2 billion yuan, a steep drop of 22.9%. In the first half of this year, taxes related to land and real estate dropped significantly. Deep tax revenue was 278 billion yuan, down 10.6% from last year, and the land value added tax came in at 307.4 billion yuan, a 4.3% drop. Revenue from selling state-owned land use rights reached only 1.53 trillion yuan, down 18.3%. In the first half of 2021, before the real estate crisis, this revenue was 3.44 trillion yuan. 3 years later, this income has fallen by more than half. Taiwanese economist Wu Jialong believes the CCP is facing a huge financial gap, both at the central and local government levels. With the collapse of real estate market, people are afraid to buy homes. Businesses are holding back on investment and nobody wants to borrow money. If the government also hesitates to borrow, the entire financial system could face serious risk. Without borrowing, money stops circulating efficiently. growth halts, debts can't be repaid, and the financial system risks collapsing. In March, the CCP's Ministry of Finance called for central and local governments to tighten their budgets and prepare for tough times. The Central Economic Work Conference also stressed the need to get used to living frugally. Despite these warnings, the first half of the year saw public budget expenditures rise by 2%, reaching 13.7 trillion yuan. Meanwhile, as government continues to accumulate debt, interest payments on that debt in the first half of the year totaled 630.4 billion yuan, up 6.5% from last year. Reflecting on this, Wu Jialong noted that the CCP is now facing what he calls the sixth simultaneous crisis. He explained that China's economy has lost momentum in areas like consumption, investment, and trade. The real economy is now facing unemployment, a real estate crisis, and deflation. In the financial sector, there are also debt crises, capital outflows, and a crisis of confidence. Any one of these crises could be hard to handle on its own, but now all six are happening at once. The CCP just doesn't have a solution, so they're trying to hold on as long as they can. In response, the CCP has introduced several new money-grabbing policies, and the landlord tax has naturally become part of their plan to raise revenue. As of 2023, nearly 260 million people in China were renting homes. With the real estate crisis, buying a house is no longer the first choice for many, which gives the rental market some room to grow. As taxes like the consumption tax and inheritance tax are still being developed, the landlord tax already has clear rules in place. It has quickly become a way for local governments to address urgent financial needs. So how will this landlord tax impact the daily lives of tenants and landlords? From a supply and demand perspective, no matter how the taxes change, the actual rent will still follow basic economic rules. It's determined by the value of the property and affected by the balance of supply and demand in the market. This means that in major cities with fast population growth and tight rental markets, especially in the central areas of top-tier and new first-tier cities, demand often exceeds supply. For high-quality properties in these areas, landlords tend to have more bargaining power. This means these landlords are likely to pass the cost of the landlord tax onto their tenants. One man pointed out that with the introduction of the landlord tax, rent prices across the country could go up in the future.
Your rent is likely going to increase because your landlord may be taxed more. This is something that was mentioned at the CCP's 20th Central Committee's third plenary session. They said that to solve local financial issues, they need to impose more local taxes, one of which is called the urban maintenance and construction tax. What's interesting about this tax is that it doesn't have a clear target. While the discussion about local tax increases was somewhat vague, they often brought up the landlord tax and real estate tax. In the past, landlords collected rent through personal transfers or cash, making it hard to enforce personal income tax. But now, as long as landlords sign rental contracts, they'll be subject to the urban maintenance and construction tax, also known as a landlord tax. For these landlords, they'll likely pass these taxes on to their tenants.
This move will indirectly raise rent for tenants. As rent prices go up, the government is no longer just taking money from landlords, but also from tenants. For landlords, the cost of renting out properties will go up in the short term, especially for properties with low demand. Landlords might need to reevaluate their overall rental cost, including taxes, maintenance, furniture, and other expenses. They also need to consider how these costs affect their profits and whether it's worth continuing to rent out their properties. In areas where there are more rentals than tenants and where rent isn't already low, the landlord tax will further reduce already small incomes for landlords. This could push more landlords to sell their properties. If these properties flood the market, it will add even more pressure to the already struggling real estate sector. Of course, the real reason for these policies isn't to help with China's real estate or economic slowdown. Instead, the goal is to keep the CCP regime afloat, as the government is running out of money and struggling to survive. At the CCP's recent meeting, they also talked about pushing for new anti-corruption laws, revising the supervision law, introducing a cross-border anti-corruption law. Wang Weidong is the secretary of the Central Financial Discipline Inspection and Supervision Work Commission. In a July 22 article, he said the CCP will strengthen its supervision on the financial system to prevent and manage risks. In fact, the CCP has been carrying out cross-border anti-corruption efforts for years. From 2014 to June 2020, the CCP captured 7,831 fugitives from over 120 countries, including 348 people on the red notice list. They recovered more than 19.6 billion yuan, which is equivalent to $2.8 billion US. The authorities are even recovering past tax rebates like those given to local businesses. Economist Wu Jialong said local governments are short on money, So now they are trying to get it back by reviewing taxes from the past 30 years. They are reclaiming the financial incentives, tax rebates, and subsidies from the early days of China's reform. The CCP is facing a huge financial gap, so they are imposing more taxes, raising fees, and handing out more fines. Their priority now is to grab as much money as they can. At the CCP's third plenary session, another key decision was to delay the retirement age and promote mutual support in elderly care. These measures are really about the CCP's financial problems, forcing them to find ways to grab more money. The CCP also talked about advancing fiscal and tax reforms. This includes improving the budget system, coordinating financial resources, giving local governments more control over taxes, and expanding local tax sources. The executive director of the Institute of Public Finance and Taxation under Renmin University of China, Lu Bingyang, said these changes are necessary because falling land sales have sharply reduced local government income. Expanding local tax sources and giving local governments more financial independence is now essential. Currently, many local governments in China are struggling financially and rely on funds from the central government. Wu Jialong also mentioned that the central government might start giving local governments more control to find their own financial solutions. However, this could lead to regional divisions similar to the late Qing dynasty and might eventually cause local governments to break away. In the CCP's view, the solution to local and central government financial problem is to take more money, applying a banded approach to their financial system. Even if people don't have money, the CCP will find ways to make them pay, accusing them of violations or crimes and confiscating their property if necessary. Right now, the country is entering a phase where taxes are disguised and money is taken by force, and all to fill the CCP's financial gap. Looking ahead, the CCP will likely impose more hidden taxes, print large amounts of money, and introduce unreasonable regulations. This could lead to the same problem seen at the end of the past Chinese dynasties: hidden taxes, mass money printing, inflation, and widespread hardship, leading to uprisings. Recently, China's A-share stock market saw a huge surge. An internet user commented that this is the CCP's new way of taking people's hard-earned money. After the Chinese stock market opened on September 30th, the three major A-share indices surged. The Shanghai Component Index opened 3.47% higher. The Shenzhen Component Index rose by 4.58%, and the Chi Next Index jumped 5.77%. Within seconds, the Shanghai Index shot up from just over 2,600 points to more than 3,200 points. More than 5,000 stocks in the market saw gains, with most sectors experiencing an increase. The A-share market soared, and related topics quickly became trending. With so many investors rushing in, Guosheng Securities trading platform crashed for 2 days in a row. Other brokerages like China Galaxy Securities, Shenwang Hongyuan Group, and Huatai Securities also experienced system crashes, according to reports from users. Data from the Cailian Press showed that trading volume in the Shanghai and Shenzhen market exceeded 1 trillion yuan, an increase of over 400 billion yuan compared to the previous day. This set a record for the fastest ever breach of the 1 trillion yuan mark. On September 30th, total trading volume reached 2.61 trillion yuan, surpassing the 2.5 trillion yuan peak from 2015, setting a new all-time high. The sudden surge in the stock market has left many people confused. Where did all this money come from, and who is entering the market? Jilin-based blogger Changsha pointed out that the recent stock market boom seems strange, and she suspects someone might be manipulating the data. She said that what's even stranger is the current economic situation. It's obvious how many people have lost their jobs, how many companies have gone bankrupt. The economy just can't support a stock market rise like this. So why is it surging? And why so aggressively? I think there's one reason. Someone behind the scene is short on cash. They've driven up the stock market to lure small investors in, and once the money is in, they'll take it to fill their financial gaps. Chen Shu didn't say exactly who she was talking about, but it's clear she was referring to the CCP. The idea is that the government is using the stock market surge to trap people's savings in a bid to grab more money. Chen Shu's viewpoint is not without basis. According to a report from mainland Chinese media, The Economic Observer, on September 28th, over 40 listed companies announced plans to reduce their holdings between September 24th and 29th. This primarily involves major shareholders controlling shareholders and actual controllers. Chinese internet technology company NetEase also reported that from September 22nd to 28th, 146 A-share companies issued 280 reduction announcements. Some shareholders sold off their shares during this time, and a few companies even broke their promise not to reduce holdings. While the air share market has been rising for only 4 days, small investors have been rushing in, while major shareholders have been cashing out. It seems they've been waiting for this moment, and once the market started rising, they quickly exited. For years, the CCP has had its eye on the 147 trillion yuan in public savings. Past attempts to encourage people to invest in real estate or the stock market to boost the economy haven't worked, but this time, the reckless stock market push seems to be working. The CCP is really targeting the money held by everyday people. Their goal is to boost company stock prices, not to make businesses more profitable or solve their problems. They're just encouraging people to borrow money to invest. If the stock market crashes and people are stuck with losses, they'll be left to deal with it themselves. The CCP won't care about the financial ruins of these small investors. They only care about stabilizing their own finances. Looking at the current state of China's stock market, things are becoming clearer. Who are these policies really helping? The biggest loser are those who keeps believing the CCP's lies. History has shown that none of the CCP's promises can be trusted, and none of their guarantees will be honored. Anyone who trusts them will eventually suffer the consequences.